Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the latest reports of container ports now being overwhelmed to the point where one insider said there was a danger that the whole thing could grind to a halt. And it's not common to see a professional journal use the term going tits up in the headline of an article, but that is exactly what's going on here. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the load starts, a journal I've quoted from a few times before, which represents the supply chain. As you might imagine, it's become a bit of a regular read for me of late. It's quite spectacular, the number of professional journals that I've been reading over the past few years that I would never have heard of before. But the headline of this article, it's all going tits up at the UK box ports, and despite what Boris says, we can't fix it. Sounds a bit grim. But what are box ports? Basically, it's where container shipments come from all over the world into the country, mostly from China, of course. There's a major one near me at Immingham, and there's a bit of a problem. See, ports such as this, particularly this is about Felixstowe at the moment, are just jam-packed with containers whose contents are going unclaimed. Another problem that exists in other countries, but where, as usual, it is only an unmanageable crisis in Britain. Although I say that, we're actually creating a crisis elsewhere as well. And this is because, say it with me now, we have a critical shortage of lorry drivers. And this is going to have international repercussions. Because as you might imagine, most of these shipping containers come from China, like I say, and they need them back. But they can't get them back. Ports are starting to stop the return of empty containers because of the sheer volume of imports coming in that's been dealt with far too slowly. You know, at Felixstowe, as I say, in the southeast of England, they've already started just doing that, just saying, well, look, we can't release the empty containers. According to the article, they're having to try and direct them to other ports like Liverpool for release because they're too congested to manage themselves, which means extra costs for the companies, you know, shipping these containers due to the cost of haulage. You've got to actually transport it via road, something that is now much more expensive in Britain due to those HGV driver shortages. It was reported that it was costing somewhere between £300 and £500 extra to recover the containers, on top of the extra delays which may cause more serious problems later on. You know, consider that a ship can carry over 20,000 containers, so a full shipload is now experiencing additional costs of somewhere between £6 and £10 million on top of their usual costs, which is surely going to mean the cost of exporting to Britain, even for countries where our trading relationship hasn't directly changed, like, you know, some countries in Asia, is substantially increasing. You know, also there's a risk that if they're not going to get their containers back anytime soon, that means then we create a bottleneck in their own exports around the rest of the world and to us as well. And the situation as reported at Felixstowe was that everything was being pushed back and it was expected that there'd be a major issue next week. So this coming week. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Actually, I suppose it depends on how major they mean by major. Major as in the government will have to get off their arse and at least make some phone calls, or major as in it'll be on the front pages because the effects are going to impact on the general public in a way that can't be hidden. You know, it's said that some carriers are potentially going to skip UK ports altogether. So you consider this, the knock-on effects. The ship diverts to Rotterdam instead. So it then has to be loaded onto lorries and taken the long way around to a suitable port in Britain. Then you have the usual delays because, well, although there aren't inbound checks as such, the outbound ones still gum up the works. And in case it had passed you by, we've got a shortage of HGV drivers to distribute the goods. So this isn't just a case of dumping the goods intended for Britain in the Netherlands and then waiting a few weeks longer before it can be sent by road to where it's needed. It means you have shipping containers building up at EU ports now as well, because we're fully blocked up in British ports. There aren't the lorries available to deal with the extra demand, and this is why it might actually make the national headlines, if not the international headlines. Because think about what's in those containers. It's all the stuff people think they're going to be buying for Christmas. You know, the things they think the stores are going to be getting in for Christmas. Some will be things that they're buying in general, you know, annoying if things run out of stock and you're wanting to get it for October and you end up getting it in February. But for the Christmas trade, for things where you'll buy it for Christmas, but it's no good if the shops don't get hold of it until February, this is going to have a big impact. Not that we should worry, because the article quoted the Prime Minister as saying that there was no crisis and that our world-leading logistics industry could fix it. This was a few days ago. My next video is going to be on Boris Johnson changing his mind on that. But that's what he said a few days ago. Well, the thing is, our world-leading logistics industry could fix it. This journal represents that world-leading logistics industry. It represents the supply chain industry. It knows what it's talking about. And the headline was clear enough. We can't fix it. They quoted someone describing Johnson as deranged. And that should be concerning, not the deranged part, the can't fix it part. You know, I've been reading professional journals, like I said, all year, last year and so on, including ones related to the supply chain like this one. And generally speaking, what you get in these articles is they contain a section from industry experts that explains what the problems are if we don't deal with it. But then they also explain what their proposals to deal with it are. You know, they venture a range of measures for the government to either permit or to action themselves. The problem is that some of them fly in the face of their Brexit ideology, you know, like rejoining the single market. Some of them should have been possible, but for the fact we just have a dogmatic government with a lazy attitude to dealing with anything. But this article points out the problems, explains what's causing them. There is no doubt at all what's causing them. But it doesn't offer a solution. Indeed, the headline states, we can't fix it. So either there is no solution to this at all, this just doesn't exist, even if the government were to suddenly be changed for one that actually wants to act in the national interest, or they've just given up vocalising the solutions because they know that the government won't act. Either way, this is another crisis that is now going to happen. And that's all there is to it. Whether it happens next week or the week after, it's going to happen. Hasn't all gone wrong yet, but the way it's been reported, it is now inevitable. Like the Brexit bus going over the cliff. It's not a big problem at that point as such. It's all a bit, you know, there's a bit of turbulence. But until it crashes to the ground below, it's fine. It's still falling. But that is still too late to avert the impending disaster. And of course, when it does hit, there'll be plenty of reports about it being a global issue. You know, they'll put, oh, yeah, but it's also, there's... I'll try and point it out that it's been caused by our ports overwhelmed. They'll be going, oh yeah, but actually there's loads of containers gumming up the works in EU ports as well. Yeah, they're ours. They're our containers. They're the containers they couldn't get to a British port, so they've dumped them in the Netherlands. So they were dropped off somewhere else because they couldn't get here. But that's what they'll be going on about. Oh, but there's problems there as well. In Belgium, the Netherlands and France. As for Johnson's remark about our world-leading logistics can fix it, well, that's his answer to everything, isn't it? Nothing is his problem. It's always someone else's job to clear up his mess. And when they don't, what then? We'll turn on them, of course. He'll blame the ports. If anyone tries to blame Brexit, he and his deranged media buddies will denounce them as Remainers. Oh, they're just Remainers. What do you expect? As if knowing the damage that Brexit was due somehow invalidates your opinions on anything. Because that's what this country seems to be now. Your opinion is only valid if you were thick or ignorant enough to not understand the situation. Anyone who actually understands something shouldn't be allowed to speak about it. But anyway, like I said, I was wondering what the next compounding crisis would be. Seems this is it. Unless, of course, another crisis would like to hit before that. Maybe one will happen tomorrow that I wasn't expecting. I guess I'll be talking about this again on the other side of the disaster. Until then, those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.